Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are diving into a truly wild story. We're going back to the explosive 1969 genesis of advanced micro devices. Yep, AMD. We'll meet the incredibly flamboyant Jerry Sanders and unpack a multi-decade proxy war that, honestly, built the foundation for the modern AI infrastructure we're all using right now. If you've ever looked at a massive neural network and thought, where did this hardware even come from? Well, you really have to understand the asymmetric, almost guerrilla warfare of the early semiconductor industry. All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to start at the gates of silicon, unpack the brilliant second source playbook, march through the fierce x86 legal war, explore AMD's unique culture of exertion, and finally, arrive at today's modern AI battlefield. So let's kick things off with part one, the gates of silicon. Picture this. It's the spring of 1969, and Fairchild Semiconductor has just completely fractured. You've got Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore walking out to launch Intel. Now, Intel was effectively a cloistered, PhD-heavy brain trust. To them, the microchip was like a monument of pure science. But out of that exact same Fairchild fallout, a very different kind of leader emerged: Jerry Sanders. Sanders wasn't a research physicist. He was this highly aggressive, silk suit-wearing global marketing director. So right out of the gate, you have this massive contrast. While Intel is building on academic prestige and proprietary theory, AMD was engineered from day one to be a high-velocity commercial execution machine. And Sanders actually pitched that exact aggressive philosophy to get AMD off the ground. Imagine him sitting in the dining room of the Clift Hotel, pitching to venture capitalists. Initially, the establishment completely rejected him. Why? Well, his founding team didn't have those elite academic credentials, and more importantly, they didn't hold a single proprietary R&D patent, zero. But Sanders pitched them with this unforgettable line: Intel is an academic institution. We are an execution machine. He sold those conservative East Coast financiers on pure execution audacity and industrial reliability. And you know what? It worked. On May 1st, 1969, he locked down $1.5 million in seed capital. He was betting everything that pure manufacturing scale could rival academic theory. Moving right along to part two, let's look at the second source playbook. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you survive in the cutthroat tech industry if you aren't inventing your own foundational physics? The secret password here is second sourcing. Back in the 1970s, the heavy hitters buying chips were the Department of Defense, aerospace contractors, and giant mainframe builders like IBM. And the government actually legally forbade buying advanced microchips unless there was a flawless backup supplier. Think about it. They literally couldn't risk a massive national security project grinding to a halt just because one factory burned down. Jerry Sanders looked at this strict mandate, and he didn't see a hurdle. He saw an absolute commercial highway for AMD. Since they didn't have massive R&D budgets, Sanders deployed his engineers to do something completely different: highly advanced molecular reverse engineering on the hottest-selling chips from competitors like Intel. But they didn't just casually copy them. They armored them. They manufactured these clones to withstand extreme military G-forces and wild temperature swings, easily passing the absolute highest-tier military specifications. A perfect example is the AM9080. It was a flawless, reverse-engineered clone of Intel's 8080. So whenever Intel hit a manufacturing bottleneck, boom, AMD stepped right in, offering a drop-in substitute. Zero design overhead for AMD, but maximum market volume. And this high-volume strategy was just incredibly effective. It actually forced a monumental industry shift by 1982. By skipping that cash-burning R&D phase, AMD scaled its revenues at lightning speed. Intel quickly realized, uh-oh, we can't just ignore these guys. In fact, Intel needed AMD's manufacturing muscle to meet the insane demand of the exploding IBM personal computer era. So in 1982, Intel was basically forced into a historic, legally binding cross-licensing treaty. They literally handed AMD access to their internal microcode, making AMD the official second source manufacturer for the entire x86 architecture. But of course, that brings us to part three, the x86 legal war. Because let's be real, peace in Silicon Valley is never permanent. That fragile truce, it shattered violently in 1985. Intel's aggressive new CEO, Andy Grove, introduced the 32-bit 386 microprocessor and made a very tactical, ruthless decision. He broke the treaty. He locked AMD out of the new microcode to totally solidify Intel's control over the platform. But Sanders? There was absolutely no way he was going to fold quietly. He fired back with a massive billion-dollar antitrust lawsuit against Intel, while simultaneously issuing a desperate high-stakes command to his engineering team. We need a cleanroom reverse engineering of the 386. Now. And what happened next is legendary. Under engineering director Ben Annixter, AMD's team didn't just rewrite the microcode from scratch to bypass those legal injunctions. They actually built a structurally superior engine. While Intel's proprietary 386 chip hit a thermal wall at a 33 MHz max clock speed, AMD's on 386 blasted right past it with a massive 40 MHz surge. They handed PC makers like Compaq a faster low-cost performance boost on a silver platter. This massive breakthrough totally challenged Intel's absolute monopoly, eventually leading to a triumphant Supreme Court settlement for AMD in 1994. Okay, let's dive into Part 4, a culture of exertion. You have to understand, surviving this kind of existential war required more than just clever engineering. While Intel was building this highly structured, top-down corporate machine, Jerry Sanders was running AMD with the chaotic energy of a Hollywood studio. He deeply believed that products don't sell themselves, people do. So he threw out the quiet, boring corporate bonuses and instead hosted these massive, high-stakes cash extravaganzas. Literally stage lotteries where assembly technicians would randomly win $25,000 in cash or high-end sports cars. But here's the catch. To demand that kind of raw physical exertion from his team, Sanders offered absolute loyalty in return. He enforced an ironclad no-layoff policy during brutal industry downturns, protecting his people even when it meant taking a painful financial hit. And that brings us to one of the most famous quotes in tech history, which perfectly captures AMD's culture. In the 1980s, you started seeing all these fabless startups, companies that would design chips but outsource the expensive physical manufacturing overseas. Sanders hated that idea. He flatly declared, "Real men have fabs." Fabs meaning silicon fabrication plants. He poured billions into state-of-the-art facilities in Austin and Dresden. To him, it was a permanent law of nature. If you truly want to compete and control your own destiny, you absolutely must possess total control over your own physical supply chain. Which leads us to our final act, Part 5, the modern AI battlefield. Let's track this unbroken mathematical continuum from 1969 right up to today. From that very first reverse-engineered clone, AMD just kept evolving. A huge validation hit in 2003 when they natively designed the 64-bit architecture with the Athlon 64, totally flipping the script and forcing Intel to license AMD's tech. Then, seeing the writing on the wall for parallel processing, AMD dropped $5.4 billion to merge with graphics giant ATI in 2006. That strategic GPU acquisition, that is the exact road that leads us right up to the generative AI race we are living in today. Because today, the true battlegrounds are the massive AI warehouses, powering systems like OpenAI and Anthropic. Right now, NVIDIA is sitting on a dominant monopoly with their Hopper and Blackwell GPUs, protected by a massive proprietary CUDA software moat. But look closely at what AMD is doing. Under the legendary leadership of CEO Dr. Lisa Su, AMD is running the exact same asymmetric playbook Sanders used back in 1969. They're leveraging an open-source ecosystem called ROCm, paired with massive volume from their Instinct MI300 GPUs to directly challenge NVIDIA's stranglehold on AI data centers. It's that classic alternative engine strategy playing out right before our eyes. So, what does this all mean? The biggest takeaway from AMD's wild history is a powerful argument for sheer industrial grit. Jerry Sanders proved that the architecture of global technology isn't just pushed forward by the conservative assets of sedentary monopolies, it's forged by independent challengers who are willing to violently expand the boundaries of what's possible. By acting as the relentless alternative, AMD forced the entire industry to move faster, proving that execution and velocity can literally reshape the world. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important thought. As we rely more and more on the automated generative systems running our planet, will we always need this kind of relentless alternative? If the software compiling our future is running on heavily centralized hardware, do we fundamentally require an audacious David to ensure no single Goliath ever permanently controls the cognitive infrastructure of the human race? It's a massive question that the history of silicon begs us to ask. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the architecture around you, and I'll catch you in the next one.